Hi and welcome back to another channeling video. Thank you for following these and thank you for contributing your amazing questions. I'm so pleased that we can do this together. So one reminder about the upcoming webinar where it will be a live channeling. So it's basically you'll be in the chat with me. I will be channeling your questions, and personal questions are welcome. The price for this is $29 and it takes place on this Saturday the 15th. So, and when it's over, you get to keep the whole recording, so you can watch it whenever you like. We still have a lot of spaces left, so at this point, it's highly likely that your question will be answered, and if the attendance isn't too big, then we can do multiple questions. So then we can do more than one question for each person. So we still have a lot of spaces, so if you're worried about not getting your question answered, I can confirm now that we don't have a lot of attendance. You can go ahead if you want your question answered, and I think it's if you don't have like if you don't have a lot of questions that would warrant like a personal reading, then this would be a good place to ask your questions. So the questions for this time is, number one, how do we deal with triggers? So triggers are when we have a trauma that is triggered by certain things, certain reminders that bring up the traumatic response in us emotionally. How do we deal with triggers? And this is super common. The next one is, explain dyslexia, please. Gotta be polite with spirit. The next one is, are there any written records of the history of the world? And if so, who has them? The next one is, how does God reach those that have no faith, or those who have been traumatized by their religious upbringing? So how do they have access to, when they've been traumatized by their upbringing, believing that God is judgmental and God hates them for whatever reason, or they have turned away from the church they grew up in because of traumatic things. How does God reach those people, or those people that have no faith, that don't belong to any particular religion? What would be their path to connecting with God? And the last one is suicide a sin? Okay, let's just get into it. How's my hair? Decent. Okay, how do we deal with triggers? I get triggers. I'm assuming many people do, but I definitely have them. How do we deal with triggers? A trigger is a reminder of a painful event that you are still affected by. Every time you are triggered, it is an opportunity to heal the impact of this event. Okay, so how do we do that? How do we heal? How do we take that opportunity to heal when we're triggered? A trigger is like a minor reliving of the trauma. And if you are to stay with your feelings in that moment and breathe through it and do not escape it, just allow the feeling to be there. Then that will contribute to the lessening of the impact. And every time you are triggered, if you do this, you will find that over time you will be less affected. The key is to not escape from your feelings, but to accept them and allow them to be there. You mentioned before that it is good to desensitize ourselves from our triggers. So like from what I understand, it's like good to expose yourself to your triggers so that you can desensitize yourself. Is that the case? Did I misunderstand that? That is true. But do not try to overwhelm yourself. Do it gently. You can expose yourself to your triggers gently and to the extent that you feel that it's manageable. It will always be helpful to expose yourself to your triggers, yes. As long as you are doing that in a safe way, and as long as you are safe while you are doing that. Is there any time when that is not the case? Yes. What you should not do is expose yourself to the same trauma as the original trauma. We are talking about triggers, things that remind of the trauma. We are not talking about going into the same traumatic situation again. In other words, do not repeat the traumatic event. Just make the triggers desensitized. Okay, I think I understood that. They mean don't repeat the traumatic event. But you can expose yourself to the triggers. That would be helpful, so that every time, if you are allowing your feelings, every time you're triggered, then the emotional impact will decrease. I think that is that what you're saying? Yes, if you can do that safely and with the knowledge that you are taking your power back and lessening the impact of those things that make you feel powerless and those things that can influence your emotional state, then that will be very helpful. By exposing yourself to your triggers in a conscious and safe way, you are taking your power back and saying that this will no longer have power over me. So that lessens the impact of the traumatic event overall. Yes, and you will find that the more you take the power off from your triggers, the less that original traumatic event will be affecting you, and eventually you can put it completely behind you. That's really good to know. I try to avoid my triggers, but that's no good, obviously. Okay, what happens if we avoid our triggers? Then you are allowing the traumatic event to have power over you even when it is over. Take your power back by desensitizing yourself to your triggers. And the triggers will be a fantastic opportunity to lessen the impact step by step. Thank you. Oh, that is quite new to me. I mean, it's not the first time Spirit has said that, but when they said it the first time, that was really new to me. I thought that avoiding triggers was the way to go. Apparently not. It's good to have that cleared out. Okay, next question is please explain dyslexia. Gotta be polite with Spirit. Please explain dyslexia. It is a creative way of handling communication. It is a creative way of thinking. Does that mean that dyslexic people are more creative? Yes, in their thinking. They are not as rigid in their cognitive pattern. They are more creative. And so they can be less locked into thinking patterns Huh. Well, that's a gift. Would you say it's more of a gift? Yes, but your society does not have a lot of tolerance for giftedness outside of your norms. And so these people feel that their gift is not appreciated, and rather they are excluded. So what do people with dyslexia need to know, or loved ones who have someone who has dyslexia? What do they need to know? It is a gift, and you will find that you have a lot of use for this gift in terms of your mental flexibility and creativity and your ability to think beyond the box. You do not have a box that confines your thinking. So what else do they need to know? What else can be helpful for them to know? Use this gift and you will get the most out of it. Focus more on the positive things that dyslexia brings you rather than the negative things of not fitting into the mold. Okay. Oh, I feel like there should be more questions on that. I feel like I should be asking more. So what kind of gifts do they have that we don't? They are not as rigid in their thinking. It is like your thinking patterns. As someone who does not have dyslexia, it is like their thinking patterns are on LSD. Things become fluid and moldable and free. Their thinking pattern is more unrestricted. And so it comes with a lot of mental creativity. Wow. Now, since I don't have dyslexia myself, but if you do, let me know if this is if this corresponds to your experience. It would be interesting to know if this rings a bell for you. Okay, next question. Are there any written records of the true history of the world? And if so, who has them? Any written record of the true history of the world? Yes. I'm seeing Africa and South America. Okay, so they have the written record of the true history of the world. Is that something that people that are alive today can interpret? Is that like, or is it, have we lost our ability to interpret these records? In South America, these records can still be understood by some, but these people feel that they are not being heard. And so, although they have the knowledge, they know that nobody wants to hear it. What about in Africa? There are records, but the ability to interpret them and understand them have been lost due to a very effective assimilation process to where people have been influenced to turn away from their history and turn towards a modern view of, or modern consensus around our history. Okay, but there must be some people there that do know. People are aware of what is said about the history, but they are generally not convinced that that is true. It is also the case that it is more convenient to go along with the world's consensus on what our history is. And so they do not hold on to their ancestors' knowledge that was passed down. I don't know if this was enough info. Can I get some more on that? What about South America, where they can still interpret these records? What do we need to know? Although they have a lot of knowledge, there is no interest in this knowledge from the surrounding world, and to some extent it would be easier for you to accept the general consensus on what your history is, because even if you knew the actual history, it would make you so different in your understanding that it may become more of a hindrance to you than a benefit. Since the whole world operates from a general consensus on what you are, where you come from, and what your history is, having knowledge of something very different would exclude you. And so it may not be in your interest to know and believe these records. Oh, I wish I had more. I wish I knew what to do with that information. So in times like this, I feel like it would have been so great if there was someone asking the questions and I could just channel, because then they would do all the thinking work in terms of follow-up questions and stuff. Because I find that it takes away from my channeling when I'm trying to think of follow-up questions, because the channeling state is very receptive, and so I turn off my own thoughts. So if I can just stay in that and if someone else does the thinking, that would have been better, because my thinking is a little bit pushed to the side in order to do the channeling. But let's just move on. So I'm doing these really quickly today. Oh, maybe we could fit in some extra questions. Okay. How does God reach those that have no faith or those who have been traumatized by their religious upbringing? So this is my personal question, because there are so many people that I've come across that every time, because me being very spiritual, if I like bring up God and in all kinds of situations, some people have a very adverse reaction to that. Because to them it means it's like loaded with all of these, barely time. It's loaded with all of these extra meanings that come from their religious upbringing. or, sometimes very judgmental ideas. And so, and I'm thinking, since we all need some spiritual influence in our lives, how does God reach those people? And I'm also thinking because, a lot of people believe that their religion is the only way to connect with God. And so I'm thinking, what about those that don't have a religion, those that grew up, without a religious community or without a religious affiliation? How do they have access to spiritual guidance? Okay, how does God reach those that have no faith or have been traumatized by their religious upbringing? God reaches everyone. There is nothing that gets in the way of God's connecting with you personally, individually. Do not worry about that. That was a very emphatic answer. That was awesome. Okay, so can you explain how? Like if someone grew up without any religious affiliation, for example. Explain how you reach them. This comes as an I. I'm gonna just go with it without questioning. Sorry. Not now. Not now. Sorry. Oh my days. Not now. Working. How does God reach? I reach people in the way that I am most accessible to them. Even if they have no faith, there will be something that they trust, be it their inner guidance, it is always the inner guidance, but the inner guidance will be different for different people. And so, if someone has no religious affiliation, they will be more of a type of personality who are more self-directed in what they believe. They usually have a bit of a skeptical nature, and so they trust their own inner guidance more, even though they may not attribute this inner guidance to God. So I reach them through this inner guidance. This inner guidance is me. I am in them. They may not, their idea of me may not be such that it allows for them to know that I am inside of them. But either way, they will hear me as themselves. And so by listening to themselves, they will be guided by me. And what they need from me, they will get in that way. This is such an awesome energy. So what about the people that have been traumatized by their religious upbringing? How do you reach them? I will be the one to show them the falsehood of their particular way of religious falsehood. I will be the one that shows them that the way they have been taught to understand God is false. I will be the one to tell them, this is not how it's supposed to feel. This is not right. You must know that within the same faith, some people will access truth from me, and other people will be misled. It is not about the rightness or wrongness about a particular religion. It is about the experiences of the individual and the form in which they received their information about me. So while in the same faith, some people developed a very strong connection with me, other people will be pushed to accept falsehoods in my name. So when it is in your interest, I will lead you to the right faith for you, or away from falsehoods. And so, whether or not you are affiliated with a faith or a religion, you will always hear my voice, and you will always hear it as your own voice. That is me inside of you. That is the unity of you and me. Oh, that's such an ecstatic feeling. I wish I could describe this. Oh, it's so ecstatic. Sorry, I need a moment. Okay, I felt like I had some questions I want to ask. So, do you lead us to the right religion or faith according to our needs? Yes, you will know what is right by how it feels. What about when we're confused and we're unsure of any particular faith? Sorry, that feeling went away because I had to focus on doing this. It was such a high. Oh my God, it was such a high. And it went away so that I could do this, but I want to let it come back. So I forgot the question. How do you help us navigate whether a particular faith tradition is right for us or not? How do you help us navigate that? By that feeling in your heart, that voice inside of you that recognizes truth. You should not be concerned about universal truth, but rather your inner voice is concerned about truth for you, because my message will be expressed in millions of ways in order for you to access the very specific way that is right for you individually. And when you find what is right for you individually, do not think that because it is perfect for you and brings you into unity with me, do not think that that is what is right for somebody else. To them, it might not be the key that unlocks their unity with me. Everybody finds their own specific, perfect way. You never need to worry about anyone else's connection to God. I am intimately connected with all of you. There is never a separation. So what about that state of confusion when we feel like we're not reaching you or we've lost touch with you? What about that state? That can happen. It is a feeling. You were never truly disconnected with me or from me. It is just that you may have been given so many messages from your environment that confuse you, and you may have put too much emphasis on what other people are saying or their seemingly perfectly rational explanations for why their path is correct. And so you may be stuck between my voice in your heart and a rational thinking pattern. But you will always know the truth for you specifically in your heart. I am always guiding you, and you know it's the right way when it is perfect for you specifically. Your path does not have to match anybody else's. You do not have to match anybody else's path. When you are true to the voice in your heart, then you are most true to me. That's when you are closest to me, by being most true to you, because you and I are one. I'm torn between focusing on the work and this overwhelming experience that I'm going through right now. I'm so glad I get to share this with you guys. I feel like nobody would believe me. I feel like nobody would believe this. Wow. I'm gonna continue with the last question. Is suicide a sin? Is suicide a sin? Yes, by your standards it is. You will blame yourselves. You will find fault with it. Yes, in that sense, it is a sin. Sin is nothing but you judging yourselves. In that sense, yes, it is a sin. We do not judge you. So from our point of view, there is no sin. There's no sin. So from your point of view, what is suicide? From our point of view, it is a change of plans. So are there any consequences for it? No, you get to choose. You choose. You are the authority. So why do some religions think it's a sin? There are various reasons for this. The purpose for this is that people do not give up. Life can be very overwhelming sometimes. This is common for many people. And so this was an encouragement for people to carry on rather than give up. Because if giving up was okay, many more people would do it. What other reasons are there for this becoming a sin in our eyes? In your hearts, you know that there is sanctity to life. You know there is purpose to life. You know it's not in vain. And so, you know that by giving up life, you know that you are giving up something very precious. I don't know if this answered the question, but I want to be honest with you guys. I am so overwhelmed by what just happened in the previous question. I am so overwhelmed. I don't know if I can, I don't know if I, with integrity, can continue. I feel like I have to cut it short here. This was really overwhelming. I'm glad I get to share it with you guys because, as I said, whenever these things happen, it's just, I don't know if anyone would believe me. So now it happened in front of you, so I'm not alone in it. But it's so overwhelming, and I feel like I can't go from there to anything else right now. Whew. So we have a webinar on Saturday. It's $29, and if you sign up, we can get your questions answered live. It won't be published anywhere else. It's only available to those who sign up. So you can have personal questions in there. We still have a lot of spaces, so it's highly likely you get your question answered or multiple questions. Thank you for joining me. Bye.